Hey guys, what's going on? Today I'm going to be building some medieval wagons as well as some cannon variants. A lot of people fail to realize that cannons did indeed exist in the Middle Ages, and they were used as artillery to assist in sieges or on the battlefield during the late 14th century and beyond. Now let's get into the build. Okay, so the wagon is now fully complete. I honestly really like the design on it, and it's got that white cover on it too, which is useful for protecting goods from any possible bad weather conditions during the journey. Speaking of goods, there's a lot of space in this wagon that can be used to store lots of goods, or you can even use this wagon as a troop transport, comfortably fitting 2 to 4 minifigures. In the front, there are a couple of seats which you can use to position a minifigure to be controlling the wagon, and on either side there are what are supposed to represent medieval handguns, but they are just the Lego musket pieces. Here is a more accurate depiction of what a medieval handgun would have looked like. You can see that it is pretty much a small cannon attached to a pole. Handguns were early firearms that played a significant role during the Middle Ages. These primitive firearms emerged in the 14th century and marked the transition from traditional weapons like bows and crossbows to the use of gunpowder. Despite this, they were not very widespread when compared to bows and crossbows, which continue to be more dominant. Handguns were essentially portable cannons. Although handguns were slow to reload, inaccurate, and had a tendency to produce a significant amount of smoke, they really didn't require extensive training when compared to bowmen, for example. Moving on, we also have this harness mechanism which attaches to the horses at the front. It can move up and down to adjust to any hills or bumps there may be in the terrain. This set also comes with 2 white horses which attach onto the harness, leaving 1 stud in between them. It functions and looks really good. And here I have another cart where I took the top cover off just to show you guys how it looks. When supply chains like these moved, it was always an opportunity for the enemy to attack and steal goods or prevent them from reaching a certain point at the very least. One of the strategies to defend against an attack on the supply chain was to actually form a barrier, so let's pretend that the attackers are here on the right. What would happen is they would move all their wagons and gear to form a barrier or a makeshift fortification so that they could then fire projectiles, whether that be arrows, crossbow bolts, or cannonballs from inside the wagons. And this is where the handguns come in useful, because most of the time there were many men who were not skilled soldiers accompanying supply chains, so these men can easily be armed with handguns which they can then simply point and shoot to enable them to at least defend themselves. Oftentimes they would also have stakes which they can put into the ground as obstacles to protect the gaps between the wagons. This way they actually stood a chance against an armed force, and there are many accounts of wagon chains defeating large enemy forces trying to intercept their supplies. But now let's build some cannons to go along with our supply chain. Alright, so this is the first cannon design that I have. I have to say, it looks great for what it is supposed to represent, an early medieval cannon. You can see that the barrel is pretty long on this one. I also really like the wheels that these cannons come with. I could definitely see myself using them for other wagon or cart builds. It is pretty much a downscaled version of just a regular Lego cartwheel. Definitely need to have these added to my collection. Let's bring in some minifigures so you guys can really see the scale of this cannon. At the back end of the cannon, you'll notice that there is a rod there with this platform underneath. This is meant to adjust the launch angle of the cannon. Now, I actually made a little adjustment just so this works better, where I simply put the platform one stud lower so that it can have a wider range of motion. This bottom platform is meant to be solidified into the ground so that the rest of the cannon can be adjusted to shoot upwards or downwards. You can even position it like this if you really wanted to, say if it was on top of a tower trying to shoot at enemies directly below. Let's talk more about how these cannons worked. First, gunners would prepare the cannon by cleaning the barrel and ensuring it was clear of any obstructions from previous firings. The barrel would then be loaded with gunpowder, followed by a projectile such as a stone or a metal shot. A touch hole located near the end of the cannon would be primed with a small amount of gunpowder, and a lit match or fuel would be brought to the touch hole to ignite the gunpowder inside the barrel. The gunpowder would then explode within the barrel and propel the cannonball forward. The force of the exploding gunpowder also exerted a backward force on the cannon itself, causing it to recoil. The cannon crew would need to withstand this recoil, and they would also typically need to reposition the cannon after each firing to aim at a new target or adjust their firing angle. After firing, the cannon would then need to be cleaned, which was a time-consuming process, especially with early cannons, which had a relatively slow rate of fire. Due to the fact that gunpowder technologies were only developing, these cannons were often inconsistent and would sometimes break down when firing. But now let's build the other cannon variant. Here we have a multi-barrel cannon. You can see that the middle two barrels extend further than the ones on the side, making it look pretty cool. It also has those same wheels as the previous cannon, which is neat. On the back here, we have a slightly different mechanism for adjusting the launch angle of the cannon utilizing the crank piece. It doesn't actually work, but you can manually push the bar down to angle the cannon upwards. The good thing about this cannon is that you can actually place it onto a base plate using the hinge clip at the end of the cannon. And this cannon would work in a similar fashion to the last one, except its reload time would be significantly longer because the gun crew would have to load each barrel and ignite them individually. This type of cannon would be useful for breaking enemy formations because you could fire multiple rounds back to back. Here is a quick comparison of the two cannons. Now let's set up a little mock to showcase the builds covered in this video. So on this road here, we're going to have a supply chain with two of these wagons, one of which will be towing a cannon, which I attached using a couple of ropes. I also have this other wagon that I have previously built for my animation project, and I'll position it at the front. Here we can set up the front line by placing a few cannons along with their gun crews. I'll also have some pavise shields for extra cover. They are possibly positioned here to bombard an enemy castle, and the supply chain is just arriving to deliver them extra ammunition and goods to prolong the siege. And of course we need to add some troops to protect the supply chain, which will be some heavily armored knights. In the back we can add another cannon which was taken away from the front lines because it had malfunctioned and now needs to be repaired, so the chief cannon engineer has come along to inspect it and see if he could do something about it. And finally, we'll also add some more light infantry troops along the backside of the supply chain for extra protection. If you guys are interested in getting some of the builds showcased in this video, I'll have the link in the description below so you can take a look. I also wanted to remind you guys that the mock contest is still active. You can check out my previous video for details if you would still like to enter. The due date for submitting your mocks will be the 15th of March, so be sure to join my Discord server to showcase your mocks. There are already some great builds there. But that's all I've got for today. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.